Hi, I'm Catherine.
And I'm Gail, and welcome to Women Over 70 Aging Reimagined, our award-winning weekly podcast. Please visit womenover70.com. Consider membership in Aging Reimagined Circle. Become a sponsor and mark your calendar now to attend our symposium in the Chicago area on October 19th, 2024. Please join us in continuing to inspire women to age with curiosity, courage, and contribution.
And today we're very happy to welcome Sally Fox, PhD, who is an advocate for women aging. Sally is a writer, coach, performer, and artist. As head of Engaging Presence, she has coached hundreds of professionals to design their lives around what matters most to them and to share their stories. Sally calls herself a recovering artist. She finds joy in a range of art forms, from gardening and clowning to singing, painting, and writing. And when she turned 50, Sally heard a voice that said, "There's more." And guided by the presence of a muse, she embarked upon the quest of a lifetime as she explored and experimented with different forms of creativity. And Sally tells her story in this 2023 book, Meeting the Muse After Midlife, A Journey to Meaning, Creativity, and Joy. So welcome, Sally, to Women Over 70.
I am so delighted to be here. I love what you both are doing.
Thank you. So before we hear about the Muse, let's start with why you believe that creativity is so important, especially as we grow older.
It makes so much sense to me that as we grow older, in our 60s, 70s, and beyond, we should be investing in the things that will continue to enhance our lives for the rest of our lives, like until we're 90 or beyond. And when you think about it, so much of what we are, like our bodies, is going to decline. We can't really get around that one. But if we keep our imagination going and our creativity, we have a way that we can keep expanding ourselves for the rest of our lives. So it just makes total sense to me that we should be investing in something that we don't have to give up. And sure, you if your hands are limited, you might have to try a different skill or a different craft, but there will always be a way that you can create. And we have a lot of exemplars to show it. But really, it's not about being famous or creating something big. It's just about living your life with a sense of wonder and discovery every day.
Mm-hmm. I like
And
that.
so how would you describe your creative self?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, it's on different levels. I mean, when I started writing my book, it was because I had pursued this path of exploring different forms because I came back from a big trip to Japan and I was on fire to express myself creatively. So that could take the form of music. It certainly took the form of writing. I went off into improv theater. I tried clowning. I went into gardening. And kind of last but not least, I became an artist. So all of those were incredibly rich and fun and fulfilling adventures to go on. And at the same time, I want to remind people that the most creative thing we can do is to design our life. And so, in a certain way, my creativity doesn't have to be about the big adventures and the particular crafts that I'm pursuing. It's also about waking up each day and wondering, how can I design this day? How can I create this day? How can I live with that sense of engagement? So that for me is the constant, and then these other adventures are really fun.
So is this what you said to me, that your most creative work is your life?
Exactly.
Is this what
Yeah,
you mean by that?
totally, totally. In fact, I want to tell you, I did a talk at a retirement center for a new friend of mine, a woman in her mid late 80s who is writing her memoir, and she was a part of a writing circle at Yale, where I also graduated. And so she sat in the front row of my talk and she said, Sally, I have been a professional artist and a musician all my life. So what's in it for me? Because I don't need to be told to pursue some creative pastime. And I looked at her and I said, "What about each day? What about designing meaningful moments or ways to keep expanding, learning, engaging in your current life?" And with that, she lit up, totally got it. Because it wasn't for her about going into art. She'd done that. But
Mhm.
finding a way that in her, at 86, she could navigate with joy and purpose, that was her creative path.
That makes a
As
lot of
I,
sense.
as I listen to you talk about being in your mid to late 80s, I'm thinking, that's me. I'm in my early to mid ladies, but 80s, but that's me. And so how do people, I really am curious about this. How do people fit in the time to be creative over, how do they spend hours doing art or dancing or how do they do that?
Well, the first thing I would do is challenge the hours piece, because even though I just love it when I have a day and nothing is scheduled and I can go out to the studio and just play without any concern. The people who have coached me and my teachers are always saying it's a 5-minute deal. If you can plug in and make a doodle, and really it can be as simple as a doodle or a little sketch,
Mhm.
or just go out and sit in your beloved creative space for 5 minutes. You'll like keep some part of you alive. You'll kick something into gear.
Mhm.
Because even though I think a lot of us have more time in our late 70s and 80s than we might have done in our career days, there at any stage we end up being too busy. And so realizing it's not the big hours, it's the consistency in little steps that can make a huge difference to us.
Yeah, makes so much sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You've talked and written about how women can use their creativity to take them through rough passages in life. Can you speak to that?
Sure. Well, I'm sure listeners and those in your audience have experienced things that are difficult because you don't get to be 70 or 80 without facing a lot of loss. And some of it is the loss of folks who are so dear to us, our family and friends. And sometimes it's the loss of capabilities and things that we would have loved to do but can no longer do. So I find joy in aging, but I don't sugarcoat it. I think it can be rough. And I know myself, I have a husband who is 88 and we're facing that place where going to Europe, doing a lot of walking with him may not be in the cards. And that hurts. It just hurts and
Mhm.
stuff. And I've also I'll say on a personal note, I lost my sister last year and that was devastating, just super rough. And a number of friends too. It was a hard year. And so, when in the face of loss, being able to express myself creatively feels so healing, so healing. One, it gives me back the sense of agency that no matter what is happening on the outside in the world today, which can also be depressing, or, the losses I face in my life, that doodle, that taking iPhone photographs as I go for a walk, the writing in a journal gives me a sense of self, like I'm still a creator. And that's super important for me.
I
Mhm.
think it's such an important message. I think when growing up, creativity was always some, within the arts that you were producing something artistic. So I never thought of myself as creative, and yet I've created many programs and a lot of things. So I think we hear it from some women too who say, "Well, yeah, that's really fine for Sally to be talking about this. She's creative.
Yeah,
I'm not."
I it's so true. In fact, I was having a coffee with one of my best friends when I was deep in writing the book, and I told her the title was Meeting the Muse After Midlife, A Journey to Meaning, Creativity, and Joy. And she looked at me with this fallen expression on her face, and she said, "Oh, Sally, don't use creativity in the title because that will discourage people like me who aren't creative from reading my book."
Mhm.
Okay. She was my partner in teaching leadership for a number of years, so I know her well. one is totally creative in the design of her work with clients and how she ran programs. But also, I looked at her, and here she was in the coffee shop. She was so beautifully appointed in her exercise clothes. I mean, they matched, and she had earrings that went with her shoes, that went with her sweatshirt. She is one of the most comfortably stylish people I know, and that's her creativity. She's also helped redesign parts of her house. She just had this idea that creativity was for artists. Artists meant being sort of underpaid and bohemian, um, or with a lot of wild-eyed ideas. That's a form of creativity, but it wasn't her form of creativity. So I say to people, look at where your heart draws you. And that's where you'll find the epicenter of your creativity. And it will look different for each of us, but we are all born creative. So never, never, never let go. It's time to let go of all sorts of messages. Let go of the mere idea that you're not creative, because it's just baked into us. You don't get a choice. You are. But you can also go out and enhance it by, supplementing it with things that you love to do.
I love that.
Yeah, I do too. So what about I know you talk a little bit about the spiritual dimension of your life and creativity. How do we understand what that means?
Well, it gets back to the first question that you were asking me. I'm one of those people who's always looking for meaning. Like, meaning matters to me. And I sat and I went, jeepers, nobody told me what's good about life after 50 or 60 or 70. And I get a lot of messages reinforcing that it's not good. And so I asked myself, why would the creator, however you refer to him, her, it, um, allow us to have 30 years of life that were empty and purposeless, and where the only end was deterioration and death? I believe that we're souls on an evolving journey, and that journey continues through the end of our life. So for me, I feel like this is our time to really um, expand our spirituality, not necessarily religiousness, because a lot of our listeners won't be religious, and that is fine. But that deep core in us that searches for meaning, that cares about values, that maybe wants to leave the world a better place. All of those for me are deeply spiritual places. And I feel like this is our time to enhance those.
Really important message.
It is, yes.
Very much so. Well, would you like to tell us a little bit about meeting the Muse?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I read this, and I was mesmerized by it, about your journey. And you say, isn't it time to follow the Muse and make this stage of life your soul-filled and fulfilling time ever? So how did this come about?
Well, it relates to what you just asked me, this quest for meaning that started in my 50s and really intensified as I turned 60. And I was starting to leave the parts of my work that I'd done, which fit me and yet didn't fit me in a certain way. Because I don't know about you, but at 60, I was sort of hungry. I was hungry for more. I was hungry to express new sides of myself. And I was also a storyteller, both. I became a professional storyteller, and I was working with organizational stories. And so I said to myself, I want to create a good story. I want to reinvent the narrative about aging. Now, that may sound a little grandiose, but it felt like, if I can show people what's possible, that may inspire, that may interest people. So I started out writing a book, which you might have called a self-help book, about, reinventing yourself after 60. But when you're engaged in a creative project, you have to listen to what that project wants from you. And so my book and this imaginal force within me that I call the Muse began talking to me and telling me, giving me direction and telling me what I needed to do. And at a certain point, the book said to me,